All right, welcome to the fourth VanHack episode, podcast episode. My name's Ilya, I'm your host, and today we have a very special guest. We have Charlyne Fothergill, who is currently HR Director at Lighthouse Labs, and as well as a mentor and advisor at Launch Academy. So she can go into it more, but she's definitely one of the top people in the HR recruiting space in the Vancouver startup scene. So really excited to have Charlyne with us today. Thank you for taking your time.
Thanks. I'm excited to come on and help you guys out.
Awesome. So I guess just as the beginning, maybe you can give everybody out there a little bit of idea of who you are, a little bit of your background, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background's in HR. I was an HR generalist for about 6 or 7 years, working in different industries. I worked in advertising, worked in engineering, and then I found myself in tech, which I absolutely fell in love with, working with a tech company. Just super cool, great people, great environment. And as an HR generalist, I did everything from hiring to firing to performance reviews, payroll, health benefits, all that kind of stuff. So obviously recruiting and hiring is always top of growing companies' priority list. So my time in tech in HR with the company I worked for, they were in a massive growth phase, and I was tasked with developing the Ruby team. Ruby on Rails 5 years ago was a lot less people in it than there is now. And definitely was successful at growing that team for that company. After that contract had ended, I found myself as the program director at GrowLab, one of Canada's premier accelerators, which is now merged with Extreme and is now Highline. And basically for almost 3 years, I ran the day-to-day operations. I worked directly with the startups in each cohort. I was part of selecting the cohort, and obviously with my background, did a lot of mentorship and guidance with them as they grew, looked into hiring their first employees. Alongside the merge, I kind of started looking for my new next opportunity, and Lighthouse Labs approached me to become their director of career services. And my job there is to essentially, Lighthouse Labs is an 8-week boot camp here in Vancouver. At the end of it, we actually help our devs find their first job. And my job is now to help those devs find jobs. So I've kind of done the whole gamut, and my career's come a little bit full circle in the last year.
Yeah, fantastic. Very cool. I've had a chance to visit Lighthouse Labs before, and definitely know they have a top program. Maybe we can delve a little bit into the boot camp, this idea of a tech boot camp. Do you mind explaining what that is and how it's beneficial?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have quite a few international students who attend our boot camps, including, I think we had one student from Brazil just before I came on board. Yeah. Basically, what we're hoping to do is to fill the talent gap. It's really hard to find devs out there. We have a great startup scene in Vancouver, great startup scene here in Canada, but it's hard to find tech talent. So what we kind of tried to do is fill that talent gap through an 8-week immersive program. Our students are here 14 to become full stack developers, essentially. Wow. We use Ruby on Rails as a basis just because it's a nice approachable language. There's lots of good practices, but we cover the whole gamut of backend database type stuff. We move into front end, they learn JavaScript, CSS, HTML, and as well our students pick a final project for 2 weeks, which they build an MVP in a group, and we present those final projects to employers as well as to the community, and it's always a super fun event and very well received. After our program, our hope is that they're ready for their first job as a junior developer, and that's where I come in and help them take everything they learned in the classroom and coach them on interviews and connect with employers and help them get that first position to the beginning of their new career.
Great, and I know you guys have a very high rate of placement, so can I just quickly ask what's the rate of placement for?
Yeah, very proudly right now we have 100% placement of students who opt into our career service track. So I have some guidelines of what people should expect when they're looking for a job, and within 3 months of graduation we place 100% of people in that first position.
Wow, within 3 months everybody gets a job. That's great. And
yeah, if you work hard, you got to work hard.
No, of course, it's not easy. Finding a job is not easy.
Definitely.
Also on the topic, another quick question: is there an average salary that you have? Can I ask about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Vancouver, the average salary for a junior level developer really varies. Obviously, we have a lot of startups. Startups tend to have a little less cash, so there's equity coming into play and things like that. But generally, you can expect kind of between 40 to 60 is what I see. 45 to 60 is kind of the average. So most companies are kind of hiring junior devs between 45 and 50. it really depends what you command. Some of it depends a lot on the company. Some companies are more familiar with salaries, have HR people, or have those backgrounds. Some companies have more money. And then obviously if they're, in a little bit more of a crunch and they need a dev sooner rather than later, sometimes they might offer more money if it comes down to a great candidate they're looking for. So salary really is a complex thing with lots of layers and different components that lead into what someone's ultimately offered at the end of the day. But 45 to 60, I think, is a comfortable range in Vancouver for a junior level developer.
And that's a pretty good salary for someone just starting out or starting out a new career field.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can have a decent 1-bedroom apartment and have a good life here in Vancouver for that amount, right?
Yeah, it's not too bad. And, I live in the suburbs personally, so I get a lot more bang for my buck, and it's not too bad with our transit system for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Take the SkyTrain.
Yeah.
Great. So now I just want to transition a little bit. You mentioned that the Vancouver startup scene and Canada startup scene as a whole is going well. What are some of the trends or kind of companies that you've been seeing that are hiring more? So what kind of companies are really looking for talent? Maybe you can name a couple, or just maybe some areas that you've been seeing that have really been hungry for talent.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's hiring talent because whether you're in the hot market of B2B SaaS software or not, you probably still need talent, even if you're doing a consumer app that's smaller or even a lifestyle business. So the bottom line is everyone's hiring talent. I think the people that kind of feel that real crunch for talent is the companies in high growth mode. So you guys hear about Hootsuite trying to hire 300 people, or they have these big numbers. It's because they're in that hyper growth mode. Same with startups, and that kind of growth trend goes down to the startups. So startups who just receive funding, usually the first thing they're doing with the funding they received is hiring. So startups are a great place to look for a job. And then, if you want to try to target startups with funding, go look at those accelerators. I have a great relationship, obviously, with the Highline alumni, and I'm always happy to place the Lighthouse Labs students there. And we definitely have seen some of those alumni build large portions of their dev team out of Lighthouse Labs grads because they're just in such a hyper growth mode. They just finished their seed rounds. They just graduated from programs, which a lot of accelerators do tie some sort of investment or follow-on funding, whether it's the BDC convertible note or otherwise. So that's always a great place to look and that trend, anyone who's growing. So that, we definitely have some big companies in Vancouver. Obviously Hootsuite's a big one. TELUS actually has a very innovative department, interactive department, which is really cool. They've taken a couple of our students. Clio's growing, Trulio, Mobify, Unbounce, and I probably get in trouble if I don't list someone who I've worked with in the past. But yeah, we're growing in Vancouver and across Canada.
Yeah, very, very cool. All right, well, maybe talk a little bit about what specific skills. I know you guys are Ruby focused. Is there any specific skill that you've been seeing, Ruby and then maybe 2 or 3 others that you maybe don't focus on, or kind of as a whole, that, if you have X skill, you have a higher chance of getting a job?
Yeah, I mean, I think on that, it really is, definitely Ruby on Rails is a popular language. JavaScript's a popular language, but there's always emerging languages. They change. Ruby wasn't the go-to language a few years ago. It was PHP, Python, that kind of thing. We see a lot of Java shops still in Vancouver. A lot of those Java shops are implementing things, and bigger companies with more complex software are using different tech stacks for different parts of their products. So to say, your best bet is to get a Ruby on Rails, experience is going to get you a job. It really depends. And that's kind of good news because it really doesn't matter what you're coming to the table with. There's probably a company that can use your tech skills day one. What I think is more important is being a quick learner. The sentiment and one of our teaching methods here at Lighthouse Labs is that idea that a good dev with a solid understanding can quickly learn any language. So we definitely have our students graduating with Ruby on Rails. They don't learn PHP here, but we have many students going to PHP shops or starting to work with Python, and they don't have a problem picking up those skills and languages. So I think, being flexible, being able to quickly learn, being resourceful. So if you are faced with an interview or a company that's interested in you and you don't have their tech stack as experience, hop online, learn about it, pick it up, do a project in it. GitHub accounts are big that employers look at them. They want to see what you're doing. They want to see that you are committed to being a developer and that you are excited to being a developer. And some companies are going to be a little bit more stringent where they really need someone with Ruby on Rails experience or with Java experience. And we definitely have a lot of .NET companies out here too. And other companies are going to take that philosophy of, we can teach a good dev who's a good team player. So it's really company specific, but I think if you can learn quickly, you'll never go wrong, and you're just setting yourself up for a better career path in general.
Yeah, that's a great point. Being flexible and learning how to learn is super important.
Absolutely.
All right, great. Maybe we can now transition to the job hunting. Looking for a job is not an easy task, as we mentioned before. There's a lot of things you have to be prepared for and kind of mentally prepared for as well. Do you mind just sharing some of your top interview tips or kind of job hunting tips?
Yeah.
Interview tips after that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So job hunting is hard, and then you have to pass the interview. So it is definitely a hard experience. The best thing I can kind of say is, you have to be patient with yourself, and it takes time. So, expecting to find a job within a week, it just doesn't happen. Even within a month is a short period of time. And some of that is just the time it takes for companies to get through the application process. So you send a resume, or you meet someone at a meetup on a Tuesday afternoon, and then, they have to talk to someone else. You have to come in for an interview. They have to talk to their team. They have to bring you back in for a second interview. And all the while, especially with a small company without an HR department, they're doing this, plus they're dealing with the deadlines of their business. Mm-hmm. So it can just take some time. So be expectant of that. And then the other thing is, it's really what you put into it. It's the type of process that if you're going to hustle, just like in business, and just like if there's any startups out there listening, you know what hustling's like. Mm-hmm. You have to do the same thing to find a job. Attend meetups, get on LinkedIn, start getting to know people in the city, start seeing what's out there, and then meeting people, sending your resume, following up, going to interviews, following up with interviews. If you don't email someone back for 3 weeks, they're likely to forget about you, just the same way as you're probably forgetting about them. So it's really an active effort just to get out there. Make sure your resume looks good. Make sure your GitHub account is up to date. Make sure your code is clean, because that's your first impression. I think spending time on resumes, and resumes are not a lot of fun to write, is really important, because it's that first impression. And often you have to represent yourself as best as you can on paper. And then hopefully that opens the door to an interview when you can get that face-to-face and they can see how great you are. In the interview process, there's no secret trick. I think the best thing to do is to go as prepared as you can. So obviously research the company, research the tech stack they're using, research as much as you can about the people. If you can find out who you're interviewing with, go on LinkedIn. It just makes you look informed. Companies want to hire people that want to work there. So if you can get excited about working there, that will come across in your interview. And then the best thing you do is just be open and really listen, because part of what they interview for is if you're going to be a good fit. So you need to really listen to the type of questions they're answering and make sure you're providing good answers. There's a thing I would definitely suggest Googling. It's if you Google Forbes top 50 interview questions. I actually have a link to it in a few blog posts I've written in the past. Those questions, I promise you, some form of that question will be asked in every single interview you go to. And I tell the students to prepare those answers, because even if they don't ask that question exactly, like they might say, they might not ask you what your biggest mistake you've made is, but they might ask you what are some things you're trying to improve on. Well, if you practice one question, it'll easily translate to the other. So just being prepared, and then also making sure you're putting your best foot forward. So take the time and remember, what are some great project successes you've had? What are some great team interactions you've had? If you take the time to kind of note down some of the highlights in your career and what they might be looking for, you can make sure to bring those up in the interviews, or have those ready. If you're so lucky that they answer that question, you can pipe up and come across really strong and good that way.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Those are all great tips. There's a lot of good content in there. I think the people are going to have to watch this episode twice just to take notes. Awesome. And I guess another thing is a lot of our audience is as you know, in Brazil, and currently there, and they're trying to kind of get an idea of what's out available up here. How do you go through that process when you're remote, when you're not actually in the city and you can't meet someone for coffee or go to a meetup physically? Do you have any tips on for someone who can do this from abroad?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be harder from abroad. It just absolutely is. I think you can do a lot while you're still physically in your country. The first thing is make sure you understand the immigration process. I can't emphasize that enough. If you haven't done the research to understand what visas you're eligible, if you're eligible for visas, because not everyone is. There's different visas, and I'm not an immigration expert by any means, but making sure you understand what it means to move to another country. You know, are you going to only be getting a year-long visa? Are you able to apply for PR after 2 years? You being really informed takes that burden off of employers. It's a little bit cumbersome for employers to engage with people applying from abroad, just because there is all those immigration questions. So right away, you put that in your cover letter. You can communicate that you're really aware and that you've figured it out, and it's not going to be a problem, and it's not going to be any friction. You're just increasing your chances of moving down the process. You know, the nice thing is, because there is a little bit of a talent gap, especially if you're a senior level developer, employers are open to hiring remote, or either remotely or even immigrating people in. But especially for startups, if you're a startup, you're a 2, 3, maybe a 10-man and woman team. You don't have someone with the legal expertise, and you also potentially don't have someone at the time that has the time to get on the phone with Immigration Canada, go through websites and see what that process is. So I think that's the first thing I say to anyone. And even our students, they often ask if they can relocate to the US. And I just tell them, like, you have to figure out your visa stuff. And there's no point in really taking any other step forward, because unfortunately, immigration laws are changing. They're always evolving. But if you can't work in Canada, like if you're not eligible for the visas, you're better off trying to find that remote work where you can work potentially from Brazil and work for a Canadian company or a US company in that respect, and just don't waste your time or employers if you don't know what's going on. And then after that, like I said, make sure you're coming across as informed about your situation as soon as you can. And then LinkedIn is incredibly powerful. Getting connected. Again, I know there's a fantastic startup scene in Brazil, and there's a lot of American companies looking to grow in Brazil. So getting connected with those companies, attending meetups even in your own hometown that maybe have connections. If there are some of the big anchor tenants that have tech dev shops and stuff in Brazil, go to those meetups, go to those events, and mention that you're interested in potentially working out of the Canadian office or the US office, and get some information about their hiring. And then just know it's hard, but people such as yourself who've lived in both places, you're a great resource. So
I hope so.
I'll talk to you. But yeah, you just want to make as many connections, and then you're applying for jobs online. AngelList is great because it's international as well. That kind of stuff. One thing, go ahead.
No, sorry, I asked about websites that people can go to see. That's all.
Yeah. So AngelList is definitely one. There's obviously lots of local websites. So Tech Vibes is a tech publication here in Vancouver, and they have a job board. So there's those. I'm trying to remember all the other ones off the top of my head. LinkedIn is fantastic for jobs. The other thing too is I tell employers this as well when they're looking. I have this rule. It's called scream it from the rooftops. If you're looking for a job or you're looking to hire someone, the first question I say, okay, well, what have you done to let people know that you're looking? And that's really powerful. So, your LinkedIn is really important. It's a really powerful tool. Status in your LinkedIn says, I'm looking for a junior dev job in Canada, because on the flip side, recruiters and companies often search LinkedIn, and they're happy. They might come across your profile, and then they came across your profile, and oh my gosh, you're actively looking. That takes away all the cold calling and kind of headhunting that sometimes has to happen on LinkedIn. The other thing I would be super mindful of for anyone internationally relocating is that in North America, obviously English is a predominant language. So make sure that your GitHub account and the correspondence you're sending is reflective of your English language. Obviously, every company is going to have a different bar and criteria for how fluent you need to be. Not everyone needs to be totally fluent, especially for developer job, but make sure you're representing how good you are in English, especially if you are quite fluent. It might be worth whipping together a few projects in English so that when you check out your GitHub account, not everything you're clicking on is in Portuguese.
Awesome. No, that last tip is really crucial. I think that having as much English content online that you produce, LinkedIn, GitHub, even a personal website,
Absolutely.
stuff like that really makes a difference for someone or a recruiter here looking into to see you. Okay, great. I think that we've had a lot of information. As I said, I think most people will probably watch this multiple times. Just lastly, is there a way that someone can get in touch with you? I know you're super busy, but maybe the Twitter handle or
Yeah, Twitter works great. I love answering things on Twitter. So it's really easy. It's just at Char, CHR _Fothergill, FOTHERGILL. Follow me. I'm a little bit protective of my LinkedIn, so if I haven't met you yet, it's a little bit tough for me to add you. But follow me on Twitter. That's always great. You can follow Lighthouse Labs on Twitter. I do regularly post blog posts with job hunting tips as well as tips for employers. So you can not only see what you should be doing, but also hear the advice I'm giving employers and see if that gives you a little strategic angle to your job hunt yourself.
Perfect. And I'll post that link here in the show notes as well. So
awesome.
If you guys like this episode, please subscribe to get more information, more videos on how to move to Vancouver and work at an awesome startup. And thank you so much for your time, Charlyne. I look forward to meeting you in person, and I'm sure you'll have a lot of people getting and following you on Twitter from this episode.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much.